I'm Mason Marangella. I'm a guitar pedal manufacturer. My company is called Vertex Effects, and I've been an avid pedal collector and enthusiast since I was 17 years old. The first pedal I ever bought was a TS9 reissue Tube Screamer. Fast forward to now, over 23 years later, I've amassed a guitar pedal collection that is enviable by most. And in that time, I've come to find that most players, including me, really only need 6 core pedals to get their sound. And I'm going to explain to you, as somebody that has owned hundreds, if not thousands of pedals over my lifetime, what I think those 6 core pedals are and how you can use them to get a myriad of tones and how to do it at various price points from budget to boutique. A few disclaimers before we get started. Firstly, we're not going to include tuners on this list. If you're wondering what some high quality tuners might be, I suggest you look in the description below where I have a list of recommended tuners that won't affect your tone, have a clean bypass, or a high quality buffer that you should check out. Secondly, no volume pedals. If you want to know about the best place to put a volume pedal in your signal path, or are curious about what I think the best volume pedals are, we have a great video about that here that I'll show you above, and I'll also link in the description. Lastly, no buffers. I'm not going to mention any dedicated buffers. For those of you who have been following me for a long time might be aghast at this. If you want to know about high quality buffers that I recommend, of course, I recommend our own. We manufacture one as Vertex Effects. And if you want to know more about that and others that I like, I have a video for that above, and I'll also link in the description, as well as a link to our buffer. I think the first thing that you should be running into is what I'm considering to be a low to mid gain overdrive. The real trick with this pedal is its versatility, and I like to choose pedals in this category that I think are great at stacking with other pedals. So for the example that I'm going to be using on my pedal board, it's the Greer Lightspeed. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be this. It could be a lot of different things. But if you're listening to what the Greer Lightspeed does, if I'm just playing a little passage here in humbucking mode on the DGT, it has some grit to it. It's still articulate, but doesn't take over the tone. So let me just show you kind of how I'm doing it here. I've got it kind of with most of the knobs sort of set in the middle. A little bit of crunch, but nothing over the top. But if I wanted to make it more boosty and not really have any gain at all, I can kind of dial most of the gain out of it and almost use it as a boost depending on my application. So I'll bring the drive way down. I'll bring the loudness up a little bit. And let's hear. My recommendations here are going to kind of be in that range of like Timmy, Lightspeed. They're kind of similar style pedals. Noble's ODR1 could be another derivative. Again, it doesn't have to be a vintage one. Any Nobles will kind of fit that bill. Tube Screamers can also really be great at fitting that bill. Blues Breakers can also be really great at fitting that bill. These are all sort of circuit styles that you can find derivatives of that will definitely do this sort of thing. So if I'm going for my budget pick, I'm definitely going to be talking about a TS9 or a Tube Screamer Mini. They're ostensibly the same circuit, a little bit different form factor, but a great buy, can do a lot of what this does. I highly recommend on Tube Screamers you don't use too much gain. It makes it sound more boxy. But if you bring that gain down, push the level up a little more, tone to taste, you can get it to sound great with a lot of different amplifiers, and it always plays great with other pedals and certainly sounds wonderful in a mix. My boutique pick is what I've got on the board. It is the Greer Lightspeed. This is a tried and true thing. A lot of session musicians use this and swear by it. You've heard it on a ton of hit records. It is becoming very quickly a staple in our industry and certainly one of those pedals that you're going to be hearing about for decades to come. So for pedal number 2, I'm thinking about it in terms of more mid to high gain overdrives, but not quite going into the distortion category. The main reason why is that I feel like we can combine two overdrives to get us into the distortion category if we need it. So I think this Masterclass here is a great example of something that can still sound great at mid gain levels, and you can crank it up to high gain and get something that sounds also pretty great. And if I'm not getting enough out of it, I can engage my light speed and push it over the edge. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Clean tone. Let's now go to the MT10. Sounds pretty gritty, but let's say I want to get into like full-blown distortion territory. I can just stack it with what I was calling pedal number 1. My light speed is kind of that low to mid gain sound. And it sounds absolutely great. These two types of circuits I find generally work well together. When you have the slightly more asymmetrical second stage in the pedal number 2, and then maybe the slightly more mid-range focus, more symmetrical clipping first stage, those things tend to work pretty well stacked together, especially in the order that I'm suggesting. So if I'm going to give you a recommendation for the best buy for this second spot, this kind of mid to high gain overdrive, at $99, you can't beat the Wampler Triumph. Absolutely great pedal. It's not exactly these type of circuits, but has a very similar response to the things that I really like about them. Highly recommend that. You can't beat it for the price point. For a boutique pick, my friends over at Karma make a fantastic version of the Masterclass. The Ibanez Masterclass are going for $500 or more on the used market, but our friends over at Karma are offering this thing for a bargain of a price, and it is all boutique, handmade here in California. So a great pedal at a great price. Even though it is boutique, you can definitely see where your money is going, not only in the build quality, but in the sound. This is one of the most underrated pedals, whether we're talking about 6 Essentials or any pedal board. It's the graphic equalizer. And these are just such workhorses and provide so much bang for the buck. You can use them as a treble boost. So if you have some kind of darker pedals or you just need to poke out in a mix, you can leave everything flat and just boost up kind of everything above 2K. You could use it as a mid boost, kind of like what I was doing there, to get a little bit more of a Stonesy type sound out of more scooped amplifiers like these deluxe reverbs that don't have much of a mid-range to begin with. I can also use it to kind of round off maybe some harsher overdrive sounds. Or I could just use it as a straight neutral clean boost, set all of the EQs flat, increase the volume, and when I step on it, I have a nice solo or lead boost with whatever I've got set up. So literally nothing that these can't do. They're a lifesaver. But let's say, for example, I had on an overdrive that was maybe a little lower gain, like the light speed, and I wanted to take it up a notch. So here it is, just the light speed on its own. Now here it is with the light speed, boosting it up in the mid-range. Of course, we could do the opposite, pull down the mid-range, and it could give us something totally dissimilar. Now, one of the cooler things is if I put everything at unity gain, and then I only increase the level, I'll just get a fairly neutral transparent boost. So this is just going to increase the volume of this overdrive. So I still got on the Greer light speed. I'm in the bridge position. So my picks here, I think a GE7 straight out of the box is a great buy. They still cover a lot of the ground of any equalizer. If I'm going to go boutique and go more high end, you could try out what I have, which is the Exact Tone Modified GE7, which just takes the frequency spectrum, the bands that the regular Boss GE7 uses, and sort of focuses them in specifically on the guitar frequencies. Another great one that's an honorable mention are from Empress, and they have something called a Para EQ, which is absolutely amazing. Also, the MXR EQs are great. I actually have one underneath on the bottom of my board there, right next to my Dynacomp, which you'll be able to see through the overhead cam. It might be blinding you with all the blue LED lights, but I actually use that as an early stage EQ to focus more on guitar changes, and then the XTS for some of the later changes as I'm trying to do more overdrive shaping. So pedal number 4. This is a spot that may be a little bit of a wild card. The use of a multi-effect. And specifically using this multi-effect to sort of cover the ground of all of the modulation devices that you might need in any given gig. This could be everything from rotary to chorus to flangers to phasers to univibes. This is something where you likely won't want to have a pedal for every individual thing that you might be doing modulation-wise. And the thing that really sold me on using multi-effects was seeing all these players in Nashville still using a Line 6 M9 as a staple on their rig. And you can see here, I have an M9 on my rig, and I'm using a chorus sound there to kind of emulate an Andy Summers-esque sort of sound. And I have to say, the M9 or any of the Line 6 products, whether it's the newer HX1 or HX Stomp or HX Effects, or just the older stuff like the M9 or M5, the effects sound pretty dang good. Like when you see Tom Bukovac or Derek Wells, two of the most prolific session musicians in Nashville using this, I mean, it's not going to replace your vintage Univibe, but it sounds pretty good. Or if I want to go over to chorus like I was doing before. It's convincing. It may not be the best chorus in the world. It may not sound as good as your Roland jazz chorus, but it's going to be in the ballpark. And if you're doing sessions, you need to get sounds quick. You're doing a gig, you need to get sounds quick. It's all here. It sounds pretty dang good. And again, vetted by some of the best players in Nashville as a staple on their board, even all these years later. The picks that I would go with for budget are the M5, which is basically a single channel version of the M9. It just has one effect on at a time. You don't have 3 separate banks. You just have one section of effects, but it can be whatever you want it to be. And it's in that same ecosystem as the M9. The other one, if you wanted to upgrade to the newest version, is the Line 6 HX1. Now, a bit more expensive, but certainly well worth it. And then if you wanted to kind of go all the way, you could go with something like the Eventide H9 or H90, which is a very advanced version of this same sort of thing, a multi-effects that can do it all. And the cool thing is you can double these up to add an additional reverb or add additional delay if you wanted to. And especially if you're using something like this, like the M9 that has multiple different effects that can be on at the same time, you can use it in multiple different ways. You can have on a delay, plus you could have on a rotary, or a delay, a reverb, and a chorus, or whatever combination thereof that you might want in order to kind of fill out the sounds on the rig. Pedal number 5, as you might have guessed, is a delay pedal. Now, I was using my Deluxe Memory Man, which is one of the all-time great analog delays, but I don't think you necessarily need anything that fancy in order to fulfill this spot. I think some of the best delays do a few things really well. I think they have musical repeats. I think that they are somewhat easy to be able to dial in terms of getting the right delay time, getting the amount of feedback that you like, the number of repeats, and being able to ensure that the mix sort of sits well with the guitar and the amplifier and the rest of the effects that you have going on. If I'm going to go with a budget pick, the tried and true option is the Boss DD3. It is still made till this day and is a good representation of an early digital delay, which still can get a little bit lo-fi sounding, but definitely is still a digital delay. But you can certainly fool people into giving it a little bit more of an analog nature, depending on how you set it and some of the other effects that you've insulated it with. If you're going to go with a boutique pick, my favorite at the moment is also made by Boss. It's called the SDE 3000, and it's based on a rack unit that Boss used to make as part of the Roland Corporation. And that was a quintessential piece of gear that's heard on multiple hit records and used by all the famous studio musicians of the 80s and 90s. Other honorable mentions for great delay pedals. Of course, the Memory Man, like I'm using here, is absolutely amazing. Also, I love the Dunlop Echoplex. That sounds absolutely incredible. Or a vintage Boss DM2 or the reissue Boss DM2. They all sound incredible. Lastly, another sleeper pick that maybe people don't know about, Free the Tone Flight Time Delay, is also an amazing effect and represents that classic rack unit by TC Electronic called the 2290, and it sounds every bit as good in a pedal format. So pedal number 6, if you haven't guessed it, it's reverb. And reverb is something where if you have a Fender amp that's a tube amp, presumably you might already have this available and on when you use your amp. And if that's the case, you can check this off the list. You don't need to add a separate reverb pedal. But if you want a little something extra or you don't have reverb on board the amp, you're most certainly going to be looking at a digital reverb of some kind. Now, the things that I like to listen for are a really nice musical decay that doesn't get too splatty. Sometimes lower quality reverbs tend to get a weird distortion in the high end, and that's pretty noticeable if you just go down and kind of hit downstroke and you'll hear kind of a weird like... This one sounds fairly musical, and this is actually coming out of the Line 6 M9. But some of my favorite standalone reverb pedals include the Hardwire RV7, which is made by Digitech, also the Digitech Polara. Both of these have a Lexicon chip within it, which is kind of the gold standard as far as rack reverbs were concerned in the 80s and 90s with the PCM series reverbs that they released. Now, also some really great ones that I really love are from UA. The brand new Golden Reverberator is amazing and sounds every bit as good as the very best reverb plugins in existence, but it's pretty expensive. A budget one that I think pretty much all you guys are going to love and is going to sound pretty dang good through almost anything is the Hall of Fame 2 Mini. And you can program this to be whatever type of reverb that you want. It can be a plate, it can be a hall, it can be a spring, etc. And then you have some controls on the front that you can manipulate. So that was my take on the 6 pedals that you actually need on your pedal board. I hope this was helpful to not only the beginners out there, but some of the seasoned pros that have been playing with pedals for decades. And we'll have all the pedals that we talked about today, not only my budget recommendations, but the more boutique recommendations and all the honorable mentions thereof. They'll all be listed, and if you decide to purchase based on one of those links, it will send me a small commission, and that's a great way for you to help contribute and help support what we're doing over here on the channel. You can additionally help by purchasing one of our pedals. My company name is Vertex Effects. All of our products are sold at all the major retailers, from Sweetwater, Chicago Music Exchange, they're on Reverb, they're on eBay, etc. All the places that you can find pedals, you're likely to find ours. Also, we have a Patreon community of like-minded people that are guitar and tone geeks just like you and me. And if you want to be part of the conversation there, I'm posting stuff all the time, behind-the-scenes stuff. I also do a lot of cool interviews with a lot of iconic rock stars that have played on a lot of the hit songs that we all know and love. So if you want to check out some behind-the-scenes stuff there or previews of upcoming videos, it's all there in advance. So please do check that out. I also offer this thing called tone consultations, where if you want me to go through your rig with you one-on-one on Zoom, I can do that and help advise you on the best way to arrange your pedals and any of the products and materials that you might need to build the pedal board of your dreams. Also, that will be linked in the description. Also, I just released a masterclass on the best ways to arrange your effect pedal order in order to optimize your sound. If you're interested in checking that out, we're offering it for a limited time at 50% off, and you can buy that over on Teachable, and I'll have a link in the description of exactly where to find it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm Mason Marangella, and we'll see you on the next one.